Today, I want to talk about Marvel and why all their movies are failing. It would be easy to bash them for being woke,
Put a chicken in and make her name it gay!
but I don't think that's what the root of the problem is. My favorite Marvel properties growing up were X-Men because of the animated series, and Spider-Man because, well, Spider-Man. And I was aware of the Hulk, so I didn't really know or care about most of the characters in phase one of the initial launch. I work in marketing, and every once in a while, in interviews, I would get asked what my favorite example of storytelling is. And I would always point to Marvel movies for their ability to make me care about characters that I had never even heard about. Telling compelling standalone stories, then building up the anticipation and weaving these stories into an exciting crossover and a team up event. I think the main issue Marvel has is a lack of understanding of what made Phase 1 as successful as it was. As you may have been able to gather, I think a large component of why everyone loved these movies was due to their expert storytelling. Originally, the model was to provide an origin story where we learn about the main character, then provide one or two standalone movies where they would then weave other characters in and hint at possible crossovers in the future, then finally bring all of these individual stories into a team-up movie. This worked to overwhelming success, and when you look at the outcomes, it culminated in an almost $3 billion global box office for Avengers Endgame alone. In fact, if you compare the 17 standalone movies to the 5 team-up movies, the movies with multiple heroes brought in over $1 billion additional in global box office returns per movie than their single storyline brethren. Unfortunately, I think the Disney and Marvel teams took the wrong lessons from this success and just decided, hey, if we're making a ton more money from these team-up movies, let's just pump those out. In my opinion, it's kind of like putting money into your retirement account. You do it early and you build it up, and then when you get to the final payoff, that's where it pays the dividends. But as you're doing it, it's just a little bit here and a little bit there. Similarly, in the movies, you want to build up the audience's care for the characters. You get them invested in characters that they may have never heard of by humanizing them and providing an understanding for their motivations. Then you build the anticipation for seeing all of these characters that you now know and love interacting with one another. You can't just say, I'm going straight to retirement with these types of movies. And this is where Marvel has whiffed heavily. Excluding Phase 1 properties, all new movies post-Avengers Endgame have averages in global box office numbers of less than half of the standalone movies in Phase 1. And it's not like there isn't an appetite for superhero movies, which seems to be the talking point I hear the most. In fact, if you look at the Phase 1 properties released after Avengers Endgame, they total almost 3 times more than their Phase 2 competition. And for added context, the Phase 1 properties after Endgame outperformed their standalone counterparts prior to Endgame by $300 million per movie. So, what went wrong here? Let's think about the origin of it all. Iron Man. In the original Iron Man, you meet Tony Stark, a self-described genius, billionaire, playboy philanthropist, who is the world's foremost weapons dealer. He's ambushed, kidnapped, and forced to find a way to escape. And that's pretty much the entire movie. A true origin story where there are no global stakes, just a man and how he ended up as Iron Man. Now let's compare this to Phase 2 properties. In Black Widow, they do sort of provide a speedrun of an origin story for Yelena, but then they also jam in Alexei, who we have no backstory for really, Personally, I found it hard to really care about either of these characters, and the movie itself felt more like an apology for never creating a proper standalone movie for Black Widow during Phase 1, which I totally think they should have. Shang-Chi, to me, actually felt like the best out of all the new movies in Phase 2, and its global box office numbers reflected that. Bringing in $432 million, it was more in line with introductory Phase 1 properties, and outperformed the rest of the movies on this list. However, it was still a bit of an underperformance. I do think the pacing felt a little bit rushed though, and I kind of hate to say it, as I'm trying to primarily focus on the theory of how they structure their storytelling. But I do recall there being some criticism of trying to cater to China with the selection of Shang-Chi. So that probably soured some would-be moviegoers here and or abroad. I really can't imagine people like being blatantly pandered to. In the Eternals, there was almost no backstory. Hey, here's this group of beings, and they have powers, and they're trying to stop a being sleeping in the earth who will grow out of it and destroy it. Okay, I could not tell you literally one of the Eternals' names. Talk about forgettable. And the worst performing by far of all of these movies in Phase 2 is the Marvels. And I have a lot of negatives to bring up here. First and foremost, when and how did Monica Rambeau get powers? Why was there no movie about this? Wasn't the last time we saw her in the Marvel universe, she's like 8 or something? And now she's a full-fledged superhero working with Nick Fury? What? Second, and probably the thing I despise the most about Marvel's current approach, was the introduction of Kamala Khan through Disney+. No. Just no. First and foremost, because if you don't care enough to provide her with a dedicated movie, why should I feel like I should care at all about Kamala Khan? This literally sends the signal to me that you don't believe in this character and her ability to support a franchise. Why even choose her as a character then? Secondly, because what if I don't feel like paying for Disney Plus? Or what if I don't want to partake in watching a television series? How is your audience supposed to understand backstories of characters when you build them out in an entirely separate form of content? You should 100% consider each of these audiences completely independent and not try to force moviegoers to become subscribers on Disney Plus to have any idea what's going on in this movie. I can understand from a business perspective why you tried to do this, but objectively, as this was your worst performing movie by far, I think your audience sides with me. This has been an issue I've seen multiple times previously starting to fester within Marvel, but this was the most flagrant example and was overwhelmingly rebuked by moviegoers. And the saddest part of this whole thing, I actually enjoyed the Kamala Khan origin story and thought it was actually pretty well done. But I still think it should have been 1 or 2 movies. And finally, there's Captain America: Brave New World. I was kind of on the fence as to whether to include it or not on this list. However, with it being Falcon's first standalone movie and how they handled Red Hulk, I felt this fell firmly in the camp of Phase 2 brain. Let's shove a villain in here with no real backstory and try to ride the popularity of Red Hulk to box office success. I think Red Hulk could have had an entire fleshed out origin story where you actually witness him becoming Red Hulk and his transition into politics, as well as his first experiences as Red Hulk. Is he just a rage machine like the Hulk was in the first movies? Does he struggle with it in the same way? None of that. Just here is the bad guy who is maybe not really a bad guy, but we aren't going to actually delve into any of those complexities. It just didn't really make sense to me. It's kind of sad, actually. Marvel has completely abandoned its grassroots storytelling to try and chase team-ups, with traditionally larger box office returns, without an understanding of why people cared about these climax movies in the first place. Funnily enough, this was actually my criticism of the DC movies when they came out. No buildup of characters in standalone movies, just the Justice League right off the rip. That'll work. Shove a bunch of superheroes nobody knows or cares about into a movie and profit, right? The numbers say otherwise. Looking forward, I think the Thunderbolts will probably underperform for the same reason. If they were to replicate the success of Phase 1, they would allow each of these characters to have one or two standalone films before bringing them into a team-up movie. Really, the only character that feels fully fleshed out is the Winter Soldier, due to his extensive presence in Phase 1 and backstory being integral to that of Captain America's. This just feels like a ham-fisted team-up movie to me. Then there's the Fantastic Four. From what I've seen, it feels like they're foregoing covering the actual origin story to catapult them into a cosmic scale consequence. Rolling out Galactus in movie number 1? What? Yeah, that completely flies in the face of what I've been preaching this entire time. There are also some other things in there that are not narrative-based that I'm less than a fan of. The inclusion of Pedro Pascal in basically everything since The Mandalorian is a bit of a red flag to me. It seems like Marvel is just trying to clog the holes in a sinking ship with Pedro Pascal. More Pedro Pascal, more Pedro Pascal. Ben Grimm seems completely different personality-wise than every depiction I've ever seen of him. And his head just looks weird in the trailers I've seen. It just doesn't really fit his body. Also, gender-bending Silver Surfer seems hilariously bad and akin to throwing dirt in the hardcore Fantastic Four fans' eyes. Yes, I understand. There is a precedent for Shia LaBeouf being the Silver Surfer, but that was for what? 3 comic books? It's just such a stupid minor decision that you didn't have to make. And it allows yet another talking point for critics trying to tear your movies down for being woke. What do you think is causing the decline of Marvel movies? There is a large vocal contingent of content creators that would squarely lay the recent failures on the MCU, or the forcing of almost all female characters down the throats of what is by all accounts primarily a male audience in comic book enthusiasts. While I will not deny this is a contributing factor, I would place the blame more on chasing profits of team-up movies without laying the proper groundwork for fans to properly care about these types of movies. This, mixed with trying to force fans to consume content across disparate platforms, is a wild departure from how the MCU was founded and built through Phase 1, and will continue to sour their current fan base. Do you agree with me? Is it something else? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you found this insightful, and subscribe to see more of my content. It really helps the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.